Here we go.
Have you ever had that one project that you have just been thinking about, dreaming about for literally years? For me, it is an epoxy river desk. And I really should say not a traditional epoxy river desk. Now, I've always had this idea in my head of more of a geometric kind of display with lots of different species of wood that would be underlit and basically glow. And I have literally been thinking about it for probably 2 to 3 years. And honestly, I've just been kind of too chicken to do it. All of that changes today. It is time to finally just get down to it, take care of it. I have no more excuses. It's time to make the desk of my dreams. This is the final design that I have settled on. As you can see, there is a river style that goes through, if you will, but again, it's more of a geometric, almost like a sine wave type look to it. And I'm gonna have different species of wood that are gonna be matching up to each other. Anywhere from spalted tamarind to walnut to purple heart. I think this is gonna give it a really nice look, and it's all gonna be capped in one big border of walnut. Bottom line is, I would be lying if I told you I wasn't pretty nervous about this build, since I have hundreds of dollars tied up into it. But that's kind of what woodworking is all about. It's taking a risk, taking a chance on something that you really are passionate about, that you've done the proper planning and prep with, and eventually you just gotta do it. I hope some of this is a how-to for you, but the ultimate goal in this is just to see what I can get done. With that, let's get into tearing down some wood and seeing if we can make this a reality.
One eternity later.
Okay, so all of these are sanded, they are ready to go. Now by themselves, a tiny piece of wood like this would not do very well in epoxy by itself. It would just float away and be awful. So, it's time to enact the next phase of my plan. To give the desktop the overall thickness I wanted, I'll be affixing the hardwood planks directly to pieces of 3/4 inch plywood. This not only gives me a stable, unified piece for the epoxy pour, but will also make it possible to attach the walnut frame, as well as multiple items underneath the desk without screwing directly into the hardwoods or the epoxy. Basically, I want this desk to look beautiful, but I need it to be stable and sturdy, and the plywood makes all of that possible.
Because I don't want to see the plywood in the finished product, I'm using a jigsaw to cut away the exposed plywood. It'll also give the hardwoods a floating look when underlit through the epoxy itself, or at least that's the hope. Note, I could have just made a straight cut here, but I like the additional support this wave cut gives the longer planks.
The next day.
I spent the evening making a container from some leftover melamine boards into this swimming pool looking beast. I'm using release tape in this build, but I'm definitely going to try release spray in future pours. Now it's just a matter of removing the extra silicone, and this container was ready. I also used a sacrificial board at the bottom of each piece to keep the planks straight and even during the glue up. Once that came off, I could then just sand everything up to a 320 grit. It's times like this when I realize just how badly I want and need a dust collection system. Epoxy is a dust magnet, so cleaning and letting the dust settle took a while, but it was definitely worth it. After one final dry fit, I locked the two pieces to the container with some screws and silicone, and this baby was ready to roll.
Well, after a little over 2 days of prep work, we are finally at the moment of truth. I will say, if you're going to do epoxy pours yourself, one thing you really want to note, and I've said this before, it's all about prep and it's all about setup. So I've got the vacuum chamber at the ready, heat gun at the ready, all my epoxies, all of my containers, everything is ready to go. And I have recruited the help of my wonderful daughter to help do the mixing and pouring, and as well as my wife to work the camera. So that way, once we're into it, we can just focus on making this a successful pour. But with that, let's go ahead and get into what everybody tuned into this video for. It's time to pour some epoxy.
pretty cool. Whoa! How cool is that? What do you think?
That's cool.
That is dope. There we go. Not bad. Not bad.
Three hours later. Okay, so you have to lift, Addie. You're lifting, turning. Turn it on its side. Now we're gonna go back your way. There you go.
It was at this moment that he knew. He f***ed up.
Oh. Oh no. Oh, I'm dumb. Oh, I'm dumb. Ah. Why am I so dumb?
The next day.
Well, let's take a moment to pause and talk about, first off, where we're at in the process, and secondly, what was with my my temper tantrum. My goal was to just use the walnut to make a simple 45-degree miter cut and basically picture frame in this desk. No problem. It is a problem if you cut it a little long just to have working space, but you don't account for the outside edge of the miter. So I was essentially a full inch short on my longest side. And I was pretty upset about it. As a woodworker, you know, you have those moments where you're just like, you're in the midst of a project, things are going smoothly, and then something goes wrong and it throws the whole thing off track. I gotta say, big thanks to my mother-in-law. You had a great idea. She basically just said, well, why don't you use end caps for it? You're already using different species of wood, so it could be an easy solution. And so that's what I did. I basically had this really cool figured piece of, I believe it's maple, and I decided just to take it and instead of doing a miter cut, I would basically have it butt up to these little end cap pieces. To give the pieces a little bit more pizzazz, I decided to cut them proud of the walnut on either side on top and bottom end by about 1/8 of an inch. By doing this, I was able to basically take it to the sander, make a little wedge, and hand sand it to the angle that I wanted. So now these little corner pieces then stand proud of the table itself. So now instead of being an accident, it's an accent. You see what I did there? Either or, it's a great lesson. I think it's okay to get mad at your mistakes, but I think it's all good to come back to it. Step away and then come back to it the next day with a fresh lens and hopefully new solutions. And that's really what I did. And that pretty much then takes us up to the present moment where everything's been sanded down ad nauseum. The glue up has been taken care of. And now that it has sat for a little bit, we are going to be ready to finally do the flood pour. It's important before I get into the flood pour, I did put caulking on the underside of the table in my gaps. And more importantly, I have taken some of the tabletop epoxy and I have done a quick, I would say a top coat with it, just to make sure that the wood itself is sealed as well as any of the edges are sealed as well. Having done that, really it's just time for the flood coat and we can see how this baby has turned out.
A few moments later.
Cool, right? Perfect. And now we mix. Oh, I just ate epoxy. Note, epoxy tastes terrible. All right. Oh, God. All right, now we just let the air out. This is cool. Let the air out, let the air in, I guess. Okay. Don't mess this up. Oh, gosh. I'm sure someone will fix that for me. Here we go. Let's see. This will be fun. Now, if the calculations are right, it should only take 2 of these. Doesn't that look like there's bubbles everywhere? I don't know, man. I just don't know. I need like a scraper. You grab a foam brush, get all the dirt off of it. So I'm just kind of pushing this out at this point. So hopefully this settles. Doesn't want to move much. What? What? Oh no, I know. You haven't been over here. I've been fighting that this whole time. I've been letting it try and settle. But like here, that, I sealed that. This, I sealed this twice. And it's still coming out, which worries me that it's all gonna settle. And it's just gonna be like, oh my God. I'm never gonna do epoxy again in my life.
The next day.
Sorry. Rolling cart. Yep, just lay her down. There you go. It is a heavy desk. So, thank you. That's what I needed.
I'm not gonna lie, getting away from working with the epoxy top for a bit is just what the doctor ordered, and the first order of business is to install this under-table charger. This specific charger is designed to charge a device from 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch away, so it's the perfect distance to hide underneath the table. And I've always dreamed of having the ability to charge a phone like this and go like full Marie Kondo and to keep the smooth, uncluttered look of the table. My only issue that this table is a bit over 1.5 inches thick, so I had to take my trusty Makita trim router and slowly start recessing my way into the desk. The full-size router was just too big to get to the edges without hitting the table legs, so this process, although slow, got me to my eventual depth. I did take the full-size router to route out the interior wood that was supporting the trim router. Even though I knew the exact depth I needed, considering my recent measuring errors, I was totally having this fear that I would blow out the wood in the top and completely ruin the project, but thankfully that didn't happen. I also made sure to cut a plug the same size and depth I needed to keep the charger snugly in place. Then it was just a few screws and a cap, and this charger was installed and ready to go. Next up was to create a contained area for the LED lighting I wanted to install. I want the LEDs in a covered box so the light would come just through the table and not light up my feet under the desk. I'm installing everything under the table with just screws and no glue, and this is by design because if I ever have an electronic component or LEDs go out, I want to be able to get in there and fix it. You may also notice a little hole as well in the wood piece that I'm installing. My thought is to have this same string of LED lights that light up the table to be able to sneak out the back of the desk through my office wall and back up behind the monitors for additional backlighting. This way, one string covers all the lighting that I need. What you're seeing here is the bracing for the PC mount. PCs are heavy and I can't drill into the epoxy itself, so by using these some scrap 3/4 inch ply, I was able to support the PC and not impede on where the LED box was being installed at the same time. Win-win. One of my final tasks under the table was to attach some cable management trays. There are so many cords, and not to mention a dedicated UPS and power strips that I didn't want to have sitting by my feet. The two black trays I found cheap on Amazon, but the middle compartment is going to hold the UPS or uninterrupted power supply. I mean, you can think of it like a huge battery. And I couldn't find anything online that was big enough or strong enough to hold up under this desk. So I just decided to build it myself. I just had to make sure I made it big enough to hold the battery, but not big enough to look stupid under the desk. And with the compartment glued and screwed, I decided to hit it with some black spray paint and some spray poly to seal it. Once it was dried, I installed it with a few screws, and with that, the bottom of the desk was complete.
Very heavy. Okay. We're gonna get right up to the edge. You're good. Take your time. Okay?
I don't have it.
I'm gonna come over. You're doing great. All good. You okay?
It's so heavy.
The last thing is sanding. Look, you've seen this before, and you may hate watching it as much as I hate doing it. I don't know. All I know is that sanding epoxy sucks. And even with a buffer and polish, nothing ever seems to look as good as right after the flood pour. Like I say, I'm still learning, but instead of more sanding, what do you say let's just get to the final product? Ladies and gentlemen, I give you my take on the Epoxy River desk.
Welcome to my updated, new and improved office space. I gotta tell you, this has been a long time coming. Not just the planning, but just a little over a month of work on this on and off. It's been a series of ups and downs, but she's finished and I'm happy. I went ahead and added a little additional ports on the front so I can use the USB or SD cards as I plug in, as well as I've got the under the table charger, which is a really cool feature. So while I'm sitting here working, I can just go ahead and charge my phone and I don't have to see the giant charger out in the way. So it's a very sleek, much more modern look. I have done a much better job of limiting the cables, giving it a nice final look, and just the desk itself, it just came out okay in the end. It's just, like I say, this is 2 years in the making, and so I couldn't be happier with the fact that this is done, and I have a much more usable space that is very functional and just very feng shui. So with that, I'm going to take a very much deserved break and do some editing, and I'm going to see you on the next one.